Everyone. Seems the rest are still joining in, so let's wait.
Hello.
Hi, Rohit. I hope you can hear me, right?
Yes.
Okay. So let's give it a start. I'm not sure if anyone else is joining in. Let me just see if there is anyone waiting. Um, no, I don't see anybody. So let's make a start then. Okay. So let me just share my screen if I've not done that yet. No. I think you can see the screen now. So let's quickly revise what we did. So until the last session, we looked into two new parameters that we defined. Because we understood a problem with the case of simple linear regression where it is quite easy for us to calculate the slope and the intercept mathematically, they being basis the angle or the inclination of that line and the points which are actually create or how we have created the line, but then that's not going to work for cases with multidimensional data. So we started looking into things like total sum of squares and otherwise known as sum of square of totals and RSS or the residual sum of square. So here R is what we determine or what we defined as the coefficient of determination, which helps in finding the variance between the actual data and the estimated data. Taking a squared sum because we want to nullify the effect of scale as well as the fact that there are positive and negative values. That's why we took a square in each and every case, and then we were able to produce the values for TSS and RSS. Now, we also looked into at the end a problem that now this RSS and TSS will be a problem for us if we have the same model in place. Let's say I have this model that I've already created, and then I am taking an input which basically is actually the rent use case input. Okay, so let's say this rent input is given by user one, and that user one has a file, a value of given x. Okay, so x of g, and he gets an output of the unknown y. So that's what he's expecting. He gets that, but then this model is going to perform very well if we have only in case we have only looked into the model's performance using TSS and RSS, then this model will perform best if I supply this data in the same scale as I have the data which I have used to train the model. Example given, if I am able to maintain the same scale, then this model is going to be very good because I have done all the optimizations and tunings and so on. But if there comes another user 2, who has got another set of data xg, let's say, and this data is not in the same scale as the earlier xg. Maybe I'll call this x1 xg and this is x2 of g. Now if I pass this over here, it's still going to give me the output. That is not an issue. In the first place, I got y1u. In the second place, I'm going to get y2u. So this is really not going to be a problem. The problem is going to be elsewhere, right? The problem is going to be the scale is different between x2g and x1g, and that's why my TSS and RSS value is going to change. The reason why they are changing is because in both the cases, we are simply taking a sum. We are not doing any normalization, right? Had it been the case, we had normalized the values by somewhere, we had scaled the values, then it was a different thing. But in both the cases of TSS and RSS, we have simply taken the sum. So that's the reason why now we are going to get rid of TSS and RSS, or maybe in some cases we can use TSS and RSS, not an issue. But mainly or primarily, we can use R squared, which is another metric which is derived from RSS and TSS using a formula, which you can see over here. So I've just added this extra line because in the last class we simply discussed this and then there was no time. We had to close the call and then we were not able to write it in the note. So I've just added that in here. So this entire thing was actually added by me. So when we have the same data and same model, application of TSS and RSS will not be an issue. But if the scale of the same data or the same use case changes, then using the same model and calculating the TSS and RSS will be challenged because the values are going to change, right? So you can't really be sure whether the first model or the first output one, is as good as output two or vice versa. So that's why, hence we need a better metric to identify our model's validity, irrespective of the change in scale, right? So I don't want to know who is that user who is passing the data, in what scale the data is passed. My model should be robust enough. Now this is also to clarify, this is just a metric. So this is not a procedure that I am using to make the data more usable. That's a different thing that I'm going to do at a later stage. I'm going to tell you what I'm going to exactly do to make the data even better, irrespective of what value or what scale in which the values are actually provided. That's called scaling, or that's an activity that we ought to do in case of any kind of predictive analytics, any kind of, let's say, machine learning. We do that. But this is where we are only talking about the metric, and the metric which is helping us to determine the model's performance in a uniform way, irrespective of what scale it is. And that can be given by R squared, which is basically I calculate the RSS. I know the formula for RSS. I know the formula for TSS. I hope we remember, right, what is RSS and what is TSS. So quickly, RSS is going to be, let's say I have these 4 points and I have drawn a line like this. This is my regression line. So my interface in this, my intercept in this case is somewhere here. My slope is this, the tan of this angle. And then I have these points. So I simply draw the lines over here, right? I take the values of y actual versus, y actual versus y predicted. And then I take the difference and do a square, right? So that's my RSS. But what happens to TSS? TSS is where I have, let's say, these 4 data points, and I simply take a mean or an average of y, and I take the difference of predicted values from the mean. So in case of TSS, this becomes yi minus y bar, right? For I is equal to 1 to m, where m is the number of training examples. But in case of RSS, it was sum of y of I minus y of I hat, okay, where I is equal to 1 to m, right? So I take the RSS, I take the TSS. So this is TSS and this is RSS. So I simply take the RSS value, okay? I take the TSS value. I divide the RSS value by the TSS value to normalize it. And now I get a fraction, which is my sum of squared fractions. So this part is a fraction. And obviously, if I subtract that from 1, I will be getting any value which is in the range of 0 to 1. Right? Now, this is going to make my life easy because since I have a value which is in the range of 0 to 1, I can now say that 0 is the value where I have the least good model. 1 is the value where I have the best model. Why is that the case? 0 is where I have a bad model. So let me write 0 is equal to bad and 1 is equal to good. Okay, or maybe best. I have not written best because then I'll have two B's, right? So this is a very bad model where I have values close to 0, but if I have values close to 1, I have a very good model. Why is that the case? If R square, okay, R square is in the range of this, okay? So if R square is equal to 1, then practically this item here, this bracket over here, or this number over here is equal to 0. So for this number to be 0, RSS has to be 0, right? If RSS is 0, then you can clearly see from this diagram. Let me change the color of the pen. That will be easier, I believe. So if you look at this diagram over here, what do you mean by RSS being equal to 0? I can say that RSS is equal to 0 now means something like this. I had 3 points and I have a regression line which is exactly crossing through all the 3 points, because that's why RSS can be 0, right? That there is no difference between actual and the predicted value. And that's the reason why the value of R square being 1 is considered the best, right? But as the distance, or as this summation increases, this RSS value increases, the numerator will increase. If the numerator will increase, to some extent the denominator is going to nullify that out. Okay, but only to some extent, because this case of TSS is where y bar will always be a constant, right? Basis how I have implemented my model, my yi bar or yi hat, yi cap, whatsoever you want to call it, it might change. So this value is flexible. This value is quite stringent. So I can simply nullify the effect of TSS here. I can simply say that TSS will have some effect on RSS, obviously, but the major effect is going to come from RSS only, because if I have all the points identified properly, just like this use case, which is like 99.99% possible in real life, in which case this value, this bracketed value becomes 0. And if this value is 0, obviously 1 minus 0 is equal to 1. So I have to make the RSS value as small as possible. Right? If I make RSS value as small as possible, this value tends to 0. This bracket value tends to 0. This will never be equal to 0, okay? But it tends to 0. The more it tends to 0, it is good for me, right? So that is the objective that I'm trying to do over here, right? That's all I'm trying to do. So in the entire history, or in the entire exercise of doing linear regression, that's all what is going to be my objective, right? My objective is going to be reducing the RSS or reducing R square. Okay. TSS is not really a good measure to take. It is a very boring kind of a method to take, but my intuition will always be like this. Now, before we go on to coding, let's just see if there is anything else that we have missed. So let me just clear all the drawings. So I hope you have understood what we are doing over here, right? So in case of linear regression, the goal is to develop an equation or formula that best describes the relationship between variables, right? So in this case, we have simplified our life, and we are saying that we just like to find the best fit line where I will assume there is a linear relationship. Now, if there is a linear relationship, what we have discussed, let me just write down. The value of RSS moving closer to 0 is what we expect or strive towards. This is because in that case, yi, or the actual value of y, is very close to the predicted value of y for each value of x. Hence, r square. Okay, I'm just going to write this as this because obviously I cannot write it, or maybe I'm going to write it like this, r squared. Okay, so r squared being near to 1 is a very easy indication of the goodness of my model. While it being closer, it being closer to 0 is indicative of the badness, okay, badness of the model, right? So that's exactly what we are going to do now. Once we have found R square, our objective is still the same. Find that one regression line for which this value is the minimal, right? This is what we were discussing yesterday as well, or in the last session, if you remember. I have 3 lines, right? For some data sets which are there with me, maybe these are the data, very bad drawing actually, but let's say this is the data and it is the same data. Let me just clear the drawings once more and let me try to draw it once more. So I have the same data which looks like this. Okay, so I'll try to draw the 3 diagrams same to each other as much as I can. Okay, and now what I have done, I have drawn 3 lines. I have one line, I have a second line, and I have a third line. Right, I would like to know which line is the best. Obviously, from the eye itself, you can see this line is the best. I know that this line is the best. So this is uh, regression line 1, regression line 2, and regression line 3. I want to know which line is really the best. I'll take the R square of this. Okay, I'll take the R square of this. I'll take the R square of this. And I will simply pick up that one line. Okay, that one single line where the value of R square is the lowest. If you are able to understand what we are doing over here, this is a completely iterative process. Okay, just like going through a loop, right? If you are, let's say, imagine writing a for loop, you have a list of 100 numbers or 200 numbers. You want to find the minimum of those 200 numbers. So what will you do? You will write a for loop which loops through each and every number. Okay, it is going through each and every number and trying to find out. Let's say you have selected an initial value for the minimum. Right, so you have given the minimum value, mean is equal to 0, or mean is equal to the first element. For now, looping through each and every element of that list, you see if minimum is less than, or the minimum is actually greater than the current element I in that list, then the minimum is equal to I. Right, so this is the algorithm to find the minimum value. Right, you complete this loop, end of the day you print M or the minimum value. Okay, you get the minimum value. Simple. So that's what you're doing. You are iterating through the entire list of numbers and you're trying to find out that one number which is minimal. In the same way, this entire thing that we have done over here is also an iterative process. We are looking at model 1, we are looking at model 2, we are looking at model 3, right? And then we find out which model really has the best or the lowest value of R square. We take that model and then we can clearly identify the intercept and the slope, and we are able to calculate theta 0 and theta 1. We formulate the values for theta 0 and theta 1, and accordingly we can formulate the answer to the question. So clearly this is like an iterative kind of a process, and the best mathematical way to do this process, this is something we are going to discuss in depth, is known as gradient descent. And why is this called gradient descent? If you remember, in one of the classes, in one of the sessions, we touched based on a very peculiar kind of a problem. I am standing on the top of a mountain, I have to come back or I have to come down. What is the best route I take to come down? So I take the same theory, I take the same idea, okay, and I try to find the regression line which gives me Okay, to minimize 1 minus r by t, can't we maximize t? Yes, we can actually maximize t. But do you have the control to do really much on t? Because you are already provided with the data. So if you already have a data, its mean throughout its lifetime is the same. You can't change that mean. Are you getting my point? So let's take an example. Let's say I have this plot and I have 4 lines, right? And I draw a line like this. This is my mean. If this is my mean, this is my y bar. Y bar for the entire life of y is going to be the same. This line is not going to change. I'm not able to move this line, right? But if I have a scenario where, let's say, this is the plot, okay, and now I'm going to draw a lot of lines. Okay, what I'm going to do, I'm going to draw a lot of lines. Okay, so let's say I have a line like this, I have a line like this, I have a line like this, I have a line like this. If I have the flexibility of drawing a lot of lines in any direction, 360 degree, I can draw any number of lines. I can draw a finite number of lines. Then I can pick that one best line. Let's say I pick this line. Okay, I pick this one best line where r square is the less or the least, right? So basically, rather than minimizing TSS, maximizing RSS, or maximizing the value of RSS becomes easy, right? Because I'm not able to change this, right? I'm not in a position to change this. This mean is a constant. It's a straight line, and my observations are actually dependent on my sample. So if I've taken a sample S1 basis some kind of sampling technique, this range remains the same. This line of I bar remains the same. I have lesser flexibility here. But in this case, I have a lot of flexibility. Now, if you look at what I'm trying to do over here, I'm drawing a lot of lines. And this is exactly what we saw when we did the gradient descent. Let's try to quickly remember what we did in case of gradient descent. We had a mountain like this, right? And there is a person who is at the top of the mountain. Okay, let's say this is me, this is my hair. Now I want to come down. So I have a 360 degree view. I can come from this side, I can come from the other side of the mountain as well. So I have a 360 degree view of the mountain. I can come down from any side. So I can actually have infinite ways in which I can come down from start till end. Okay, I have infinite ways in which I can come down from start to end. And then I simply select that one way, which is the fastest, okay, to come down. And then I actually receive at the bottom where I have a gift for me, right? So I just have to come down and I have to find that one function or that one method which is the most easy for me to come down, just like Google Maps finding the most easy route for me to come from A to B, right? So that's what I'm trying to do, and that is exactly what we are doing in that diagram as well. If you look at the diagram once more, this is X, this is Y. I have some points like this, and I want to create some lines. So what I'm trying to do, let's say I will start with a line like this. Then I go with a line like this. Then I go with a line like this. Then I go with a line like this. This is like selecting one of the routes, right, to come down from the top of the mountain to the bottom of the mountain. So this is exactly similar as to what is happening here. I'm just trying to find out one route. And then obviously part of the analysis, I come to a conclusion. This route, if you just ignore the rest of the diagrams, this route is actually the best. Okay, because it may have the minimal distance from each and every point. Hence the r square, I expect the r square to be very close to 1. And if this is really close to 1, I select that line. Once I've selected the line, I select the intercept, or I am able to calculate the intercept and the slope easily. I hope the justification was clear, right, Rohi, or do you have any more questions?
Yeah, I got it.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks.
Okay. But that's not the end of our problems, actually. Before we move on to gradient descent and try to understand what it is, because gradient descent is basically some application of calculus, and we have not looked into calculus. So we will look into calculus later on, but maybe I'll just go through what is actually happening over here in a very, very simple way, first of all. And then let's try to find out what we can do to improve it. Okay, so we have an equation which is h of theta x. So let me just see if I can, yeah. So I'll just calm down. And we have an equation which is, let me just take the line once more. Have I taken? No. So yeah, so I'll take the line. Yeah. So I have an equation which is h of x, h of theta, which takes the input as x. So the idea is to choose this h of theta x, or to make this h of theta x as close as possible to your actual y. Okay, so that's what the intention is, right? So the expected model, the model is going to be so good that it must result into output which is really close. Okay, h of theta x, this model is really close to the actual value of y, right? In the set of training examples containing x and y. So using x and y, I'll now be given an unknown x of g. I want to find the unknown y, and it should be as close as possible. And hence, I need to do a minimization of theta 0 and theta 1. Now, there is a lot of mathematics that we can do, yeah, to find this. But to be very honest, what we need to do is that clearly, if I have to minimize this, what I need to do is h of theta of x, of any value of x, let's say x of I, minus, okay, minus the predicted value, okay, which is y of I, or the actual value, okay, the actual value of I, right? So this is value. So this is the predicted value h of theta x of I. This is the prediction minus the actual value. So this value must be as small as possible. So what I do, just to nullify the effect of scale, I take a square. I sum up all the numbers, obviously I equal to 1 to m, all the training examples. And then even better, I divide this number by 2m. Now why I am doing this 2m is basis a calculation. Okay, it's a mathematical calculation which we are going to look at a later stage, because as of now we have not learned calculus. We need to use differentiation theory to find this out. We'll quickly look at that maybe at later stage, or maybe we can try to ignore it as well. But this 2m is just to signify that if I take a differentiation, or if I'm trying to minimize this value, a division by 2 of m just to nullify the effect of m as well is really a good take. Okay, and that's why this equation can now be used to minimize the values of theta 0 and theta 1, so that I have a value or a set of values for theta 0 and theta 1 so close, so good, that h of theta x of I for any given I is almost equal to y of I, which makes this point or this bracketed value is equal to 0. So that's what my intention is. I'm going to define this function or this equation as j of theta 0 comma theta 1, and this j thing, okay, is known as a cost function. Okay, this is a cost function. In any kind of optimization problem or in any kind of minimization problem, we find a cost function. This is exactly what is done by any problem where you have an optimization use case. Example, I want to optimize the delivery of, let's say, electronic gadgets which I am actually manufacturing, or maybe I am actually doing the assembly of the gadgets in my factory, which is there in, let's say, Maharashtra. In some highway kind of a location, I have a factory where I'm actually manufacturing electronic items, or I'm actually producing them there, or I'm actually assembling them there. I just heard in one of the news today that iPhone 11 will be made in India. So you can take that example as well. So let's say there is a factory in Maharashtra which is actually assembling iPhone 11. Okay. Now, how do I optimize this? This is a very common business question. Every statistician working in that company is trying to answer that question and is trying to optimize the process as much as possible, that the variables of the production of iPhone 11 in that factory, let's say there are only two variables, theta 0, theta 1. In reality, there will be multi-million. How can we find the optimal values of theta 0, theta 1 so that my delivery charges or my distribution charges, my expenditure towards bringing the final product to the market is reduced, right? Then what is going to happen is the total cost of ownership or the total cost that I have to produce the item will be far less than the marked price or the total cost or the marked price, right? Or the MRP. If I have this case that my total cost of ownership or production cost is actually much less than the MRP, as much less it is, I'm making that much of profit, right? So that is the intention. So in that case also, you have a concept called cost function. In that case also, we have something, some j of some theta 0, theta 1 until theta n, which the mathematician or the statistician is going to solve. And he's going to find the optimal values of theta 0 and theta 1 by means of which that equation can be solved, and that we can find the optimal values of theta 0 and theta 1 so that I may be producing an iPhone 11, let's say per item or per phone, I have produced only at a range of, let's say, with a cost of 10K, and I have sold it at a cost of, let's say, 80K. Okay, so per phone, I have a balance or I have a profit of 70K at least, right? So as much as this gap is without impacting the quality, then I have done my job. So why I said without impacting the quality is because if your quality is less, nobody will buy. So in this case, in this scenario, quality becomes the constraint. So in each and every cost function kind of scenario, you always have a constraint, right? The constraint in our case, when it comes to linear regression, or for that matter, any regression case, is how much you can be flexible with respect to your data. What that means is, if you have a lot of variance in your data, a lot of variety in your data, it'll take a lot of time for you to converge the best values of theta 0 and theta 1 for the cost function. In other words, it'll take a lot of time for you to come down from the top of the mountain. If you are here, although you have a view, okay, although you have a view of the mountain, you see how I have drawn the mountain now. It's a very steep kind of mountain. So 360-degree, it is steep. I have to come down from here to the bottom. This is where I have my gift, right? So irrespective of the the line or the path I choose, I know that it is always going to be a very steep path. This kind of a difficult situation takes a lot of time for me to come down, or at least to choose the path that I'm going to take to come down. Once I've chosen the path, I can maybe slide down, right? Because this is a mountain with like a very smooth kind of a mountain, and it is like I can also view all the sides of the mountain, right? So if I've selected this path, then it becomes somewhat easy for me. But to select that path also is going to take me a lot of time. I just have to figure out the best way to minimize or to find this pathway to come downstairs without affecting the assumption or without affecting the scenario. The scenario in this case is my structure is quite stringent. Okay, the slope is quite slippery. In the same way, in case of my iPhone 11 example, my constraint, my assumption was I should not be validating the quality of the phone. It does not happen that I've created a very bad phone, right? So that's the kind of constraints that we have. And basis the constraints, we will have to figure out what we can do, okay, to minimize, right? What we can do to minimize this. The one way to minimize this, sorry. One of the ways in which I can try to, let's say, minimize, or I can try to assume is that, let's say, I will again take my pen and I'll try to draw something. So I have h of theta x, the function, which is equal to theta 0, which is my intercept, and theta 1 of x. If I simplify my life and I assume, okay, just for some time, let's assume that my intercept is actually passing through 0. So this value is actually 0. So what I mean by that is, let's say I have a line like this, and the 0 point is this, right? So my regression line is like this. If I assume that my regression line is like this, then this point becomes theta 0, right? So if I assume this, then I no longer have to minimize j of theta 0 and theta 1. Now I just have to minimize theta 1. Now, this is a very valid use case. I'm not saying this because I just want to finish this, or I just want to do some very random or idiotic kind of assumptions, and I would like to solve the problem as soon as really possible. But this is like a very real kind of a use case. It resonates with the use case that we are taking as well. So x being the cost of my house and y being the rent, or x being the size, I'm sorry, in square feet, and y being the rent. If there is no flat or there is no apartment, then the size is equal to 0. Obviously, the cost will be equal to 0. So intercept in this case will be equal to 0. So there will be practical cases, right? There will be practical cases where the intercept is going to start from 0. Example given, I'm just trying to figure out what is the relationship between age and IQ. If there is any linear relationship between age and IQ, obviously when I am not born, I have no IQ. I can't have an IQ because I'm not there. So that line is always going to start from 0. Maybe it is going to take a form like this, and it is going to then come down like this. So it may not really be a linear kind of thing, or maybe there is no relationship. Maybe this hypothesis or this question itself is wrong. But it's a very valid use case that theta of 0 can be equal to 1, in which case I just have to minimize the value of theta 1. Okay, and then I just have to find this value. So I am then going to be only interested in the slope theta 1, which can be multiplied by x, so that if these are my points, let's say, then this hypothesis h, or this model h, should properly represent all my points. Okay, so that's another way of simplifying the problem statement. Now, if I do that, right, if I do that, then what is going to happen is that, let me just take another pen, and I'll just draw 2 lines. So this is my x, this is my y. Let's say this is 1, 2, 3, and this is also 1, 2, and 3. So my line passes through the origin, right? So this is my line. Okay. So imagine I have a very uniform kind of a distribution, and my points, my actual points, are also falling on the line itself. Okay, just imagine if this is the case, then what is the value of theta 1? What do you think is going to be the value for theta 1? The value for theta 1 is going to be 1, because for each and every change of x, I have the same change of y, right? Or in other words, the sum of square of the distance of actual minus predicted point in each of the cases is 0, because my regression line is so well fit that it goes through all the points. If that's the case, then if you remember the formula for j, or j of theta 0, theta 1, which is now just like j of theta 1, and this formula was nothing but 1 divided by 2 of m. Let's say I have 3 examples. So 1 divided by 2 multiplied by 3 multiplied by sum of all the squared distances, or all the squared differences. So 0 square, obviously, plus 0 square plus 0 square, right? In this case, so this is equal to 0. I have actually minimized the value of theta 1 being 1, where the cost function output is equal to 0. Right? I hope you got the point. Now let's take another practical example. Okay, let's take a practical example. This is really not a practical example. A practical example is where I have x and y like this, and I have a line, obviously theta 0 I have assumed to be 0, right? So, and then I have points which are like this. One point is here, one point is here, and one point is here, let's say. Right? Let's say I have done the calculations of this distances from each and every point on the line, and I find out that there is a variation of 0.5. Okay, or I have calculated that this theta 1, okay, is actually equal to, let me take a smooth pen, theta 1 is now equal to, let's say, 0.5. I'm able to calculate what are the distances here, right? So if I calculate the distances, or maybe I'll just do one thing. Let me just clear this, and let me make the example even more simple so that it is easy for me to understand. I take the line here, which is the y-axis. I take the line here, which is the x-axis. I have 3 points, okay, 1, 2, and 3 of x. I have 3 points, 1, 2, and 3 of y, okay. Now I take the points, which is actually the intersection. X of 1 is equal to y of 1. X of 2 is equal to y of 2. X of 3 is equal to y of 3. Now I take a line, which is my regression line, passing through the origin, but it goes like this. So the distance here is, let's say this one is the distance, this one is the distance, this one is the distance, right? For theta 1 is equal to 0.5. So this angle, I have selected this angle in such a way, that theta 1, my slope has become 0.5. Okay, this is mathematically possible, right? So if the theta 1 value is actually 0.5, then what is actually happening here? What is actually happening here is this point becomes 0.5, this point becomes 1, and this point becomes 1.5. Okay, so this is 0.5, this point is 1, and this point is 1.5. Okay, these are the predictive values, but the actual values are 3, 2, and 1. So what happens to my j of theta? My j of theta is equal to 1 divided by 6, right? So 1 divided by m I have to divide, so that is 2 multiplied by 3. For theta 1 is equal to 0.5, that's the slope, or that's the growth rate in which I'm increasing. I hope you understood why this point is 0.5, why this point is 1, right? If theta 1 is equal to 0.5, right? If y is equal to, let's say theta 0 is 0, theta 1 is 0.5 into x, okay? Then I can clearly say x is equal to y, this is multiplied by 2. No, this is not the case, right? X divided by 2. Yeah, sure, yes. So x, or in this case, y is equal to x divided by 2, right? Or I can say x divided by y is equal to 2. So I have each and every predicted points. Okay, predicted points are such that, okay, predicted points are such that x divided by y comes equal to 2. So that's how these points are drawn: 0.5, 1, and 1.5. Okay, if you do a simple kind of a calculation, you will find, you see, for x equal to 3, this is 3, this is 2, this is 1, right? Again, this is 1, this is 2, this is 3, right? So for x is equal to 3, I have a value which is closer to 1.5. The predicted value closer to 1.5. So this y value becomes 1.5, x value is 3, right? So 3 divided by 1.5 is what? 2, right? I hope you have understood this now, right? So this value is 0.5, this value is 1, this value is 1.5. These are the predicted values, and these are the actual values. So what do? I minus the predicted values, or h of theta x, from the actual values. So 0.5 minus 1 square plus 1 minus 2 square plus 1.5 minus 3 square, right? I found out, and this calculation comes out to be approximately 1 by 6 multiplied by, I've already done the calculation earlier, so I'm just going to give you the rough answer. It's 3.5 divided by 6, approximately 0.58. Okay, this is for j of what? 0.5, right? Theta 1 we are trying to do the minimization. Theta 1 in this case is 0.5. In my earlier page, I saw theta of 1 is equal to what? 0. Right? And theta of 0.5 is equal to close to 0.58, or maybe this is approximately equal to 0.6, right? If now I take a lot of calculations for variety of different values of theta 1, for each and every value of theta 1, I'm trying to find out what is the value of the cost function, and I'm trying to plot that. Okay, so what I'm trying to do over here is, on the x-axis, I have the values for theta 1, and on the y-axis, I have the values for j of theta 1. Then you will see I have started from a value which is like 1. For it says this is 0.5, this is 1, this is 1.5, this is 2, this is 2.5, and so on. So for theta 1 is equal to 1, my value was 0. So I have a point here. For theta 1 is equal to 0.5, I have a value closer to 0.6. Let's say this is 0.6. So I have a point here. I lower the value of theta 1, I will see I get a j of theta 1, something like this. I increase the value, I'll get j of theta 1 value, something like this. You see what is happening here? If you try to visualize this, let me take a different color of pen. This is kind of a curve. And you draw this into a 3D, it becomes a contour plot. Okay, it is the same contour plot we have seen earlier. So we are starting from somewhere, we have to come down. So our objective is, I'm on the top of the mountain, I have to come here. Why do I need to come here? Is because this is where j of theta 1 is equal to minimal. So I have to come here. Obviously, I cannot come here. Real life use case, theta 0 may not be equal to 0, right? Theta 0 may not be equal to 0 always. So you may not always be able to come down here, but there is a probability, right, of coming down here. So that's exactly what we are doing. And that is exactly what is happening here while we are trying to minimize, right? While we are trying to minimize. So the goal is to minimize or to create a minimization function. The function that looks something like this. Okay, I have y-axis, I have x-axis, and I have the curve, which is something like this. I'm going to finally create a curve like this. This curve is my okay. So this curve is my curve for j of theta. Okay. I have to find some value of theta 1 somehow where the value is as minimal as possible. I may not be reaching a value which is 0. That is too much to expect. But then, okay, if I can at least reach some value, okay, then it will be very good, right? If let's say I reach some value where theta 1 is equal to, let's say, 0.06. Okay, let's say this is just a dummy number. And obviously in real life, theta 0 might not be equal to 0. So even if you don't have a flat, you have to pay some amount. Okay, why? I will explain. Okay, so let's just try to draw the y and x axis, right? So x and y axis we have drawn. And let's say this is the line, right? Why is this line now actually not passing through the origin and going through a point here? I have defined this point that theta 0 is equal to 50. Why is this 50? Maybe you are looking for a rent of that flat by some kind of broker. So obviously every broker is going to take some kind of a brokerage charge. That brokerage charge will always come on top of the rent of the house. So that's why there is always some amount which is extra than the rent amount, right? So that is what the intercept is. Intercept is something which is always extra than the actual amount, right? So practically intercept also represents an amount which is always more than what you are expecting to pay, right? So in this case, that will be this value, right? So in this case, what is going to be my equation? My equation is going to be 50 plus 0.06 multiplied by the value of xg or any given x. I pass the size in square feet in this case. I have the equation now. I can clearly tell you the approximation of the rent. How did I find this value 0.06 being equal to theta 1? This is using this graph. I don't have to find this. There are actually mathematical ways to find this. I already know I can write an algorithm to find this. I can write a program to find this. So a computer program will be written, a function will be called, which is going to do this exercise, and it is going to optimally find the value of theta1, where j of theta, okay, this axis is j of theta, this is theta1, where j of theta is the lowest. Right? So that is how we are going to minimize the value. I hope we have got the point. So let's make it a stop here. We are going to continue in the next week. I'll share all the documentations. If you have any queries, please do let me know. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Thanks,
Thank
Pankaj.
you. Good night.